Way back in 2007, in the distant Antarctic, in Werner Herzog's documentary, a colony of penguins is heading towards the ocean. One of them suddenly starts looking towards a distant cold mountain. And he takes a step, and then another step, and he starts heading over to that mountain. Now, on the other side you have the ocean, food, safety. That's where the colony's headed. That's where that penguin will get anything it needs and fulfill its basic desires. But for some reason, it starts going towards the mountain. There's no reason why it's going to the mountain, in fact. There's no discernible reason. It's just probably certain death, and there's nothing for it there. There's no food, there's no shelter. But that penguin keeps going. And that has been discussed at length. It sparked a massive philosophical debate about what exactly it means. Why is that penguin making that choice? You know, what possible reason is there? Some people call it nihilism, other people say it's depression. And yet that debate has been rejuvenated recently thanks to a post by the White House of Trump and the penguin heading over. Some people have debated that that was because of Greenland, others, you know, a fascist dog whistle. But whatever have you, that debate of the mountain, of the penguin, is more alive than ever. And there's good reason for it, because it's not just the penguin, you know, it's a human debate as well. We have in 1923 the example of the British explorer George Mallory, who was also heading towards Mount Everest, in fact. And he was asked, allegedly, why he would do it, why was he going to the mountain? And all he said was, because it's there. Fittingly, perhaps tragically, but fittingly, George Mallory disappeared. His body was recovered, but there's debates about whether he reached the peak or not. And that does represent the entire idea of climbing the mountain and the peak. You know, you don't do it because there's a treasure waiting for you. You don't do it because there's a reward that's waiting for you. The mountain is there, it calls, and you must answer. That's fascinated people for centuries, you know, the idea of climbing mountains, the idea of doing these things that you simply must, of overcoming yourself, in fact. And it's more relevant than ever because we live in the era of endless distractions where every single base instinct of yours is also fulfillable within a click of a button, you know. You have at your beck and call, you can order perfectly cooked food that'll satisfy your need for nutrition. You have dating apps where you just swipe a couple of times and your need for reproduction is also fulfilled. You have millions upon billions, possibly trillions at this point, of video and entertainment available in different platforms. Yeah, video games, you have anything you want. And it's so difficult nowadays for a person to overcome that, to look for something greater, to look for something different, to in fact inflict suffering upon himself, to overcome his base desires, to look for the mountain. That's a concept that's fascinated philosophers for centuries, possibly millennia, depending on how you look at it. It's the concept of the Faustian will, as it's sometimes put forward. You know, in Goethe's famous work, Faust, who is striving for knowledge and power, and no cost is too great to achieve that. And you have famously Nietzsche, who conceptualized it as the will to power, that every human being has a need for knowledge, for power, for something greater than himself. That's something that we aim to become the overman, you know, the popular word. And it's also linked to the idea of amor fati, which is the Latin word for love your fate, no matter what it is, no matter whether it's hardship or difficulty, that you must learn to accept fate as it is, something that's that's been conceptualized even before Nietzsche, actually, by Marcus Aurelius and his idea of Stoicism, that you have to accept the things you can't change and do whatever you can about the things you can change. You know, it is a famous essay about the popular myth of Sisyphus, who was pushing a rock up a mountain. He was punished to forever push a rock up a mountain, but could never reach the top. And there's a famous essay that was put forward that we must actually look at it as not the tragedy, but rather as the idea that Sisyphus found happiness in that pursuit one day. Nietzsche's ideas and the will to power, amor fati, have very popularly been linked to fascism, to all these ideologies, but they're collectivist ideologies. At its core, it's an individualistic ideology. It's the idea of bettering yourself, of becoming a better man. And it has massive civilizational repercussions, national repercussions. It is in fact the grand European spirit, the spirit of rugged individualism. The idea of people like Magellan, who did his journey across the world and in fact did a lot to prove that the world is round and open up new trade routes, and he never actually lived to see the end of his journey. He spent grueling years traveling in horrible conditions, and he passed away, but he did it anyway. It's Copernicus who spent about 30 years, unless I'm very much mistaken, developing his heliocentric model to prove that the Earth revolves around the Sun, and he published it on his deathbed. He never got to see what his work amounted to, but he did it anyway. It's cathedrals and buildings across Europe, like the Florence Cathedral that that took about 140 years to build. Well, the person who started building it, who planned it, who wanted to build it, he never saw it finished. That goes to say for the Kyon Cathedral, for the Duomo in Milan, and for many other buildings. That's the spirit that we must do things greater than ourselves, and the idea that is how civilization is driven forward by individualism, by great men who are capable of driving forward entire civilizations, of entire discoveries, of earth-shaking things. That's the contrast to collectivism, which is the idea that the sum of lesser men is greater than that of a greater man. But we have proof, we have the greatest civilization of the world, possibly in Europe, that we have, that was built with this spirit. That's what it relies on, And it, again, as I said before, it's no coincidence that the great spirit of individualism, of will to power, of amor fati, of all these concepts is now relevant. It's no coincidence that you may be thinking like, it's a penguin at the end, right? It's a penguin. what are you doing making all of this out of a penguin? Yeah, but that's the beauty of it, There's no reason why the penguin did it. There's no possible reason why that penguin did what it did. There's no explanation for it. Just as there is no rational explanation for overcoming yourself or overcoming your base desires. That's where it actually is. Once you're doing these things for something greater than yourself, or for something that you cannot actually explain, once you inflict upon yourself suffering, there's something illogical, then you have achieved that, well, at least you're trying to achieve what I'm talking about. The path to immortality, the path to something greater. Recently, in fact, in the US, that is why they posted the photo of Trump. They have been posting all these things about reclaiming their land, about remembering who they are. That's because America, much like many of these civilizations, was built upon this idea of rugged individualism, that every man must better themselves, that every man must become as great as they can be. And that at its core as a civilization, it did inherit the European spirit, regardless of how far away we are from then. As Europe inherited the Roman spirit of improving yourself, which in fact inherited the Hellenic spirit of improving yourself. The idea of gymnasiums, philosophers going all the way back to Socrates about, the idea of improving your body and your mind, of doing better, of constantly overcoming yourself, of striving for something greater. The Americans are trying to recapture that. I wouldn't say successfully at this point, but it is the idea behind all these things. And I'm not even sure if they're completely aware about the philosophical ramifications of what they're doing, of what they're trying to do. But I feel like it's something instinctive to us men of European origin. I feel like it's something we have deep within ourselves. It's something that we all know. We all hear this call. So it is something that will come about, no matter whether they can explain it or not, no matter whether people can explain it. It is just buried under the endless distractions of everyday life. It's something that you reach in moments of quiet reflection, and we don't even have the drive of boredom anymore, because it's reasonable that within reflection and boredom, you will hear that call a lot louder than you will if your thoughts are filled with music and videos and, order food from delivery and dating apps and all these things. So we don't have that anymore. So it's much harder to find it, to discover it. And in fact, that's why it's much more necessary than ever. And that's why the penguin was so famous. That's the idea. Now you know why that sparks so many debates, so many things these days. I'm very interested to hear what you think about it. I'm very interested to hear what you think about the penguin and about the spirit that we've lost, the great European spirit, the great spirit of individualism. Well, that's about it. That's about as much as I can explain it. So I'll see you next time. Take care.